Hey fellas, hope you guys doing great. In today's video we will see, what if Naruto reincarnated as Alicorn and built Harem with Luna, Chrysalis, Rarity, Lyra, Part 2. Huge shout out to Ethereal Trixster for this story. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe and like the video. So let's start the story. It had been 2 weeks since the Nightmare Moon episode, and thankfully no pony knew what actually happened. It was divine luck to Naruto that Celestia was nice enough to pay for his hospital bill, although he was still feeling the effects of the battle as he stood on his hooves. 100 bits for all the injuries Nightmare Moon gave, and with all things considered, Naruto, it actually sounds like Celestia got off with a cheap bill. This was another problem, well, for Naruto at least. He figured Senna would become a one-time thing with the fight. Sadly, he was greatly mistaken. The Guardian Pegasus, as she put it, wanted more contact with him more than thanks to his lack of need for any sort of power. The constant voice in his head was nice for a while as he stayed cooped up in the hospital, but now that he was back in the carousel boutique, his once busy life now seemed dull. Hey Rarity, need anything? I'm going out. He waited for a reply, wishing Sweetie Belle was around. The little filly would have been great company as he scoured Ponyville for some sort of work or anything to keep him busy. Speaking of the little filly, Naruto was making it a constant reminder to stay in touch with Sweetie Belle as she begged her parents to attend school in Ponyville to be closer with her new filly friend. Naruto darling, can you be a dear and fetch a book I ordered? Twilight should have received it by now. I would do it myself, but this stitching is proving more of a hassle than I expected. The Alicorn nodded as he set out. Hopefully Twilight would let him borrow Spike for a while. A few letters to Luna couldn't hurt, and he was sure that Spike would appreciate the time off and much needed dude time with the Alicorn. A win-win for both parties except Twilight. Gotcha Rarity, be back in an hour or two, if not I'm hanging with Spike. He didn't hear any sort of rebuttal or anything, so Naruto just chalked it up. She was already back to working on whatever her outfit was from the Grand Galloping Gala. He smiled towards the ponies of Ponyville, taking in the sights as each pony began their daily business. Time turner setting the town's clock, Mayor went through the streets of Ponyville smiling and purchasing certain things from each pony's stands. Countless ponies just seemed to be finally settling in as they all talked with each other, reminiscing about the activities that had started to pass and how they fared yesterday in sales. Naruto's heels ached as he stopped at Twilight's, another testament to his lack of recovery. He knocked once and waited, plopping himself on the ground, waiting for some pony or dragon to open up. Hold on a second. The dragon's voice sounded off through the library as Naruto wondered if it was always like this at the library. It didn't matter as long as he could get to do something. His eyes followed the door as it slowly opened, revealing Twilight standing in the doorway. Naruto, the Alicorn I wanted to see. No time to explain, you need to help me prepare to go visit Canterlot. The unicorn looked frantic, packing a few books in her satchel set across her back. Whatever was happening in Canterlot must have been important, because even he never seen the unicorn move this fast. Before stopping, sliding into a bookshelf. Wait Naruto, you can come with, just get Rarity and pack fast as possible, we need to be there soon as possible. Naruto looked at Twilight dashing around like a pale imitation of Rainbow Dash grounded. Sorry Naruto, it's just Twilight's excited about the fact she can compete in the MTP happening this year. Thanks to Luna's return, Celestia can finally watch over the competition. Naruto looked down at Spike, as if he grew a second head as he tried to explain what this meant to Twilight. Okay, imagine this Naruto, the most talented unicorns in all of Equestria gathering in one place, showing off their magical talent, and Celestia and a few others judge those ponies to see who is the best. Now imagine it happening the day after tomorrow. That's why Twilight's in a hurry. Naruto nodded in excitement as Spike had gave him the short version of the little unicorn get-together, and apparently from the look on Twilight's face this wasn't even half of what this thing stood for. Spike, finish finding the practical spell books that I need. I'll explain the magically talented ponies of Equestria competition to Naruto. The competition is a proud equestrian tradition that dates back to when Star Swirl the Bearded was around. In fact, Princess Celestia was the very first winner of the competition, which made her his impromptu student for winning the competition. Princess Luna won the next one as she learned under the tutelage of Star Swirl. Since before the passing of Star Swirl there could only be one winner of each competition, but since he is no longer with us, Celestia thought it wasn't fair for there to be only one winner since there was so many different types of magic, so she split the categories into 4 different competitions with each their own prize. The competition lasts a day, but the festivities is what draws the unicorns in. It really is the only time for us magic folk to celebrate anywhere in Equestria. Now this was awesome. Who knew that they had something so exciting happening in Canterlot? So Twilight, can any pony enter the competition or is it just for unicorns? Twilight had Naruto's full attention. Something new was right up the Alicorn's alley, and this sounded fun. Yeah, you can, Naruto. It's open to any pony with magical talent, and the only ponies that are restricted from entering are anyone without magical talent, and no pony can enter more than one category. Speaking of categories, there are many, and every pony brings some sort of new spell to show off in their respective field. She watched Naruto blink this time. She had his attention, and the mare was going to milk it for all it's worth. The categories are as follows: practical use, which is something that any unicorn or alicorn in your case show off a new spell of their own creation which is supposed to be used by every pony. Last year's winner made an animation spell that was simply amazing and real easy to us one small objects. The next one is a show of grace, or the use magic fluently with the best of ease. Many unicorns falter at this competition once the distractions start. I'm going to compete in that one. Hopefully my teleportation magic will win the crowd's heart. Naruto could see the barely contained excitement as she shuffled her hooves in anticipation. The other 2 are defensive magic and attack-based magic. Usually military-based ponies win these categories as it's only practical for them to learn such spells. Like Shining Armor won the defensive spells last year. His magical barrier spell impressed many ponies watching. Even Celestia was taken with a spell no pony could break. She trailed off at the thought of her brother winning the competition last year. She would follow in his hoofsteps and win the best magical talent like he did last year. The best part about the competition, Naruto, is that the best of each category compete, and trying to win the best in magical talent. This year countless unicorns are going to enter, so I need to be at my best. Naruto nodded as his mind already went to him doing a victory lap and being praised with as he celebrated with Rarity and Luna. So are you thinking about entering the competition, Naruto? I mean, I'm sure every pony won't mind you entering, especially since you'd probably be entering the attack competition, with you defending us against the creatures of the Everfree Forest. He grinned at that. No pony knew what he had up his sleeve. Yeah, I'm going to enter this, Twilight. I mean, how many times does this chance come around? His hoof planted squarely against her muzzle, as he knew what she was going to say. It was a rhetorical question, Twilight. He watched her eyes narrow in on him. I know what rhetorical is, Twilight. Well, what it means, I think. Just quit looking at me like that, Twilight. He could see the mirth in the eyes as she chuckled into his asterisk pastern, as his hoof went further into her muzzle. Fine, I get it. I'm stupid. Just stop laughing, Twilight. He removed his and met the laughter head-on as she finally stopped, as Spike came crashing toward the 2 littering the library floor with countless spellbooks. Well, since you both look busy, I'm going to get Rarity to help with the packing and see if she wants to come with. He didn't bother replying. He just gave the unicorn a grateful nod as he started galloping back towards the carousel boutique. Twilight sighed as she helped Spike pick the last of her books, wondering what Naruto had up his sleeve to impress the judges of Equestria. Come on, we need to pack properly. A properly prepared plan will win over the ponies of Canterlot, and finally make them all proud. Twilight's head went to the clouds as she thought of her family and Celestia cheering for her victory, as she took the pedestal and became immortalized as she would stand next to her brother for the years to come. Spike, I need you to ask Celestia for some a larger hot air balloon for Naruto and Rarity. The Alicorn, galloping through the crowd of Ponyville, never noticed the bottom half of the door as he slammed into it, sending him crashing in 2 various outfits, landing in front of Rarity, causing her to shriek in terror at his appearance. Oh no, I thought I taught you better than this. Naruto, we know that you are more of an autumn or early winter. Green just doesn't go with your tail or your coat. What you should be wearing is something more of a deep dark red, maybe a tad of black to go with it, but that's not the point. The point is, don't dress yourself. The unicorn sighed as she placed another stitching her ensemble, before draping a piece of deep red fabric on Naruto. Stay still, I'm begging you, Naruto. I'm almost positive that this will suit you. She ignored the fact that his hooves kept moving as she started trying to adjust the fabric around his frame. Rarity, come on, I got something important to tell you, so stop for a second. He let out a sigh of relief as the black fabric stopped in midair, hovering just above his head. Okay, well, Rarity, have you heard of the magically talented ponies of Equestria? He looked at her with bright blue eyes, trying to gauge her emotions. Well, Twilight's entering, so I thought I could give it a try myself. No pony knows what I can do besides Celestia, and she's not going to tell any pony, so I have a good chance to take this thing. Besides, it's in Canterlot, so you'll fit right in, and I could use the cheering support, you, and would make a great team. His eyes didn't betray him as she relented somewhat as she heard the name Luna. Her eyes flinched in fear. Naruto, please don't go. Try next year, I'm sure then you'll have time to prepare for the next contest. Her eyes softened as she knew he'd relent at such a heartfelt plea. It wasn't in his nature or heart to turn down a request from her. She didn't need him to meet Princess Luna again, especially after she witnessed the look Luna gave him as he rested in the hospital, one full of compassion and longing. Each glance just made her feel a twinge of jealousy. Rarity, I can't listen to you, not this time. If I wait a year, then sure I'd be twice as good as I enter now, but I want to meet the ponies of Canterlot, and everywhere. If nothing else, I want to see Canterlot like I was supposed to. I'm going to enter, Rarity, maybe I'll find some cool spells there. Twilight's going and I'm going too, so I'll see you in about a week. The Alicorn didn't bother paying attention to Rarity's sputtering, his mind elsewhere as he focused on the things he'd see and the ponies he would meet. Luna would cheer him on, and he was sure Spike and Twilight would as well. He'd just have to prove that to Rarity and every other unicorn there. His saddlebags packed lightly as he magically lifted, placing it on his back. Hey Rarity, can you help me? I need you to tie this saddle around my asterisk barrel? Naruto dragged his saddlebags with him as he slowly trotted down the stairs, seeing the unicorn already preparing herself. I thought you didn't want me to go, Rarity? He watched as she sighed to herself, magically lifting the saddlebags from his grip as she prepared, settling the bags on his frame. The bags tightened across his form as she turned away from him as he assisted her with saddlebags. Naruto, I don't approve of this one bit, but I'm not going to change your mind, so that's why I'm coming with, so you don't anger some unicorn. She didn't bother checking her attire. She was going to be cheering for Naruto and Twilight, no reason stealing the spotlight from them, as every pony would be doing the same. Well, come on Naruto, we should head to Twilight's. They both trotted off toward their intended destination, both minds trying to think of something to say along the trip. Naruto just stood in place as he walked off the train, his body mesmerized at the city. Words couldn't describe the awe he felt. He was grateful as Rarity draped a coat over him so he could walk through Canterlot with the peace of mind. The towers of ivory pierced the sky with golden spires. It was so lively compared to the dull activity in Ponyville. His eyes scanned the streets as unicorns came pouring out of the woodwork. Naruto, this place is packed with all kinds of unicorns. It's kind of intimidating. With this many unicorns here, your little Miss Trick is probably going to flop now. Naruto couldn't argue with Senna, she was right. He could not begin to imagine the magic spells they were going to use. But what was unsettling was the stares of every pony, all focused on his frame. Isn't that him? I heard he was there when Princess Luna returned. Celestia's cousin Blueblood must be a little jealous of him. Sure, Blueblood is Celestia's first cousin, but Naruto's the Alicorn's second cousin, or not? Such a scandal, Celestia's cousin with her apprentice and another unicorn. I must tell Bonbon this. The crowd's murmurs of excitement and curious stares scared him as he just wished every pony would stop looking at him like he was some sideshow. Well, we need to go, every pony, Naruto, and I need to go meet Princess Celestia, so if you all could please move, we would be gladly on our way. The Alicorn was eternally grateful of Twilight diffusing the situation, letting the crowd finally get over the initial reaction, and began gossiping over the newest addition to the royal family, giving the group some room to head toward the Canterlot castle. Spike, lead the way, we need to meet Celestia as soon as possible, especially with the deadline today. Naruto's first concern was how Luna and Celestia were doing in Canterlot, but with everything that just transpired, maybe he would need to add a few more questions plaguing his mind. Naruto let his thoughts settle on the biggest question: what did they mean by Celestia's cousin? And who was Prince Blueblood? The trip to Canterlot Castle had some minor stops along the way, and by minor it was many, and by stops it was Naruto being magically dragged into a shop and then out of it by either Twilight or Rarity. The stops aside, Naruto's first Canterlot experience was pretty awesome so far. He had met quite a few nice ponies along the way, and wondered why he had to meet some pony named Fancy Pants. So this is Canterlot Castle. It's bigger than anything in Ponyville. He ignored the stares as he followed Twilight towards the castle. Rarity was definitely loving the little trot towards the castle, especially the attention she was getting. I'll talk to Celestia Naruto, see if she can sign us up for the competition. Spike, would you mind showing them around? Twilight's gaze stopped as two Pegasus guards blocked her way, stopping her as she attempted to and pass her each time she passes. Celestia only wants the presence of Naruto Uzumaki. All other business is to be taken to Princess Luna for the time being, so please move on, miss. The Alicorn's brow furrowed as the words rung through his ears. Celestia wanted him and everything was handled by Luna. This didn't sound as a sound idea from someone who ruled over Equestria for 1,000 years alone. So I can go in, but no pony else until after my talk with Celestia? The guards nodded as the Alicorn thought on it, and started his first few steps, glancing as the Pegasus guards moved aside, letting him pass. I'll talk to her, Twilight. You go and get us all signed up. He looked back at the trio before stepping in as the doors closed behind him. Celestia standing in the center of the room, her mane of countless colors whipping back and forth as the door clicked, signifying that the door had been locked. Cerulean eyes met a pale magenta, both staring at each other, as Celestia grinned at the blonde Alicorn walked closer. Naruto, please sit, we have much to discuss, especially since I have a very busy schedule to uphold. Her legs bent down as she gazed eye to eye at Naruto. Naruto swallowed the collective spit in his mouth. The last time they had met he didn't really care who she was, he just wanted to save Luna, that was all that mattered. Then it was different this time. His legs felt like iron as each step he made towards the equine royalty. His knees buckled every time he stopped to stare at her presence once more. He stopped halfway as his body collapsed on itself, as he mustered the courage to stand back up, his body feeling lighter as his gaze hit the ground. The courage came back to him. In fact, everything felt better as he broke away from Celestia's stare. His body even felt better than he entered. What was that? I just stared at her, and everything felt as if I wanted to just turn to stone. His mind paced itself at the imposing question, trying to figure out what to ask first, and then it hit him, everything. That's what he wanted to know. Celestia, what was that? Everything became heavier as I tried to walk toward you. There was no joy or even humor between the two Alicorns. Naruto gazing at the reflection of Celestia on the ground as she stared at him. Sorry, Naruto, I just wanted to test something. The gentle voice spoke volumes of how concerned she was, but he made no motion to gazing back at her or towards her direction at the moment. The reflection was just fine. Personally, I was hoping you would come sooner, but I'm not one to rush things. Naruto, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Luna returning was supposed to be beaten by the elements of harmony or myself. I never considered you getting involved in this, and thanks to that, well, things escalated here in Canterlot. The people wanted to meet you and find out about your relation to, well, the royal family. He looked at the Celestia's reflection across the floor. He could see her still standing proud as her voice betrayed her posture. The Canterlot newspaper came to its own conclusions about your heritage, and I'm sure you can understand where this is going. Naruto's eyes raised only a little to meet the hooves now trembling. Will you become Ika's-trained royalty, Naruto? He understood the question. It just didn't mean much to him, the words she spoke. Equestrian royalty? He rolled the thought in his head, trying to think of something more to say as they stood across each other. His eyes finally met hers, the overbearing pressure gone as the emotion clearly showing in her eyes. I'm not related to either of you, though. The son Alicorn nodded as Naruto bristled at the comment. So wouldn't that be lying to all of Equestria? The words echoed through the main chamber as Celestia's eyes deepened with anticipation. I would love to tell you, Naruto, that Equestria is a place where our history has been nothing but the truth. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Equestria has many lies buried here in this very castle, and many more across this fair land. One of those lies was the story of my dear sister Luna and her ties to Nightmare Moon. Her face showed no concern as Naruto's horn began to glow its usual vermilion color. I mean, how would it look in the history books that my sister was corrupted by jealousy and sought to change the land to eternal night? Her concern didn't change as a familiar mist began to surround the chambers. It was the only act of war we ever committed, you know. I hope you understand that I did what was necessary. She could feel the mist thicken as he stared at her. It wrapped across her legs, tightening as his gaze fixated on her. Naruto, what I did was wrong, yes, but it is a necessary price to pay if I wanted everyone in Equestria to live a life of peace than one of strife and conflict. Naruto's anger waned as the Alicorn continued. You did something similar, Naruto. You were willing to sacrifice yourself to save her from the loneliness she felt, an admirable trait, and no different from my own sacrifice. Albeit you sacrificed much more and saved my dear sister instead of imprisoning her against her will. The tendrils of mist dissipated as Naruto looked on at the ruler of Equestria. I'm not asking you out of some fleeting thing such as quelling the gossips of Canterlot. This is something that I want to do to repay you for all that you did for Equestria and saving my sister. Can I stay in Ponyville or will I have to move to Canterlot? Naruto watched as Celestia walked closer to him. Her eyes shined with cheer. Oh no, Naruto, you can stay in Ponyville. My niece doesn't even live in Equestria. This is more of a formality of things. If you choose to agree, I'll make arrangements at once and everything will be set up as fast as you can imagine. Celestia waited on hopeful ears as Naruto's muzzle began to move. I accept. Naruto's eyes bulged as Celestia hugged his frame, pulling him close before breaking apart and staring at the blonde Alicorn. Thanks, Celestia. Do you mind if I go sign up for the competition now? He ignored the gaze as the equestrian ruler unlocked the door and bid him an adieu. The Alicorn stood still, contemplating the pros of what he just agreed to compared to everything else he had done so far, and yet here he was waiting for a chance to talk with Luna while he signed up to be a show pony. Didn't I tell Rarity I was nobody's show pony, and yet here I am competing like one? Well, at least it's just magic. The Alicorn waited as the line grew ever shorter as the minutes passed on, as he let other hopeful unicorns pass in front of him, until he was among the last of the registering ponies. Thous have taken thine time to meet thee. Do we repulse you so much like fair maiden? Rarity exclaimed so vehemently. Naruto's nose bristled at the thought of Luna being repulsive. She had this aura of charm around her he just couldn't quite place as they both stared into the other's eyes. So does thy memory mistaken on the eve of my rebirth, or was it a flimsy flight of fancy that you and I had? The Alicorn stared off as the two Pegasus guards and a few registering unicorns speculated what seemed to be a quarrel between the two. I don't remember it being passionate, more like a one and done, and not even enough time to work things out. Both Alicorns butted heads as they both glared, trying to make the other back down, the rest of the crowd sputtering as they spoke to each other. Does thou have a proposition to suffer our quarrel, or will we spat verbal insults against each other? The Pegasus guards prepared themselves for anything ready to happen as Luna flipped her mane as it draped across her forehead, smiling at the blonde before her, signing one of the sheets. We'll settle this tonight then, Luna, you and me somewhere in Canterlot, say at 8? He glanced at her, every spectator confused or twitching on the floor at the boldness of their statement. He just turned away, his tail whipping at random intervals as everyone regained their composure, gaining the attention of a mint-green unicorn curious about everything that just transpired. Come on, Lyra, we gotta get you ready, you have to compete tomorrow. The mint unicorn nodded as her mane bristled just at the look of the competitors' names. You think you can outshine Celestia's student? Lyra just nodded dumbly as her eyes scanned the other lists looking for any familiar names. Twilight Sparkle, Celestia's student, Naruto Uzumaki, some pony related to Celestia, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a Lula Moon entering. Why did I have to enter this year? Lyra's eyes scanned the sheets as she prayed to Celestia to help her win this competition. The night bristled as Naruto stared at the desolate streets of Ponyville before looking for any pony. His hooves clacked against the ground as he strolled down a street, his horn glowing the usual vermilion aura lighting the misty night of Ponyville. Any pony there? His hooves stopped as the dragging of hooves rang in his ears. The slow steps finally reached his vermilion light. Naruto's hooves froze in place as his eyes met whatever it was in front of him, a dull orange-ridden coat and a hanging jaw as it mewed out something intelligible as it shuffled closer into the light. His eyes gazed at the pony's flank as 3 red apples laid on its right backside. Applejack? The pony didn't register Naruto's pleas, instead letting out a guttural growl, It stopped any sort of sound that tried to erupt from Naruto's lips, his horn still glue, hoping for a response from Applejack. He watched her move closer and closer to him before lunging at him, her jaw nearly clamping down on his shoulder as tendrils of vermilion magic wrapped around the insides of her muzzle. It was the only thing that stopped him from an unpleasant bite. "Applejack, what are you doing?" He backed away as the poor mare struggled against her bindings, trying to break free. The Alicorn just watched her once bright eyes now lifeless as he stared into them. "What happened, Applejack? Talk to me." The tendrils loosened as they began to dissipate one by one. He watched the mare dive at him again, crashing in at the ground, and with the crash, Applejack fell to the ground, he neck broken and jaw moving at irregular intervals. Naruto stared at his fallen friend in shock as he tried to think of something to say or do, watching her defy the laws of nature as she stumbled back to her feet. Naruto watched as a spear slammed into her head, impaling the skull as her slowly slid to the ground with a squelch at each passing inch. Naruto cried at the sudden impact as he tried to rationalize the situation. Someone just killed Applejack after she survived such a gruesome crash. He slowly backed towards the nearest, trying to disappear from whoever the murder was. He stopped as another spear passed by his right, impaling another pony to the wall, its jaw hovering close to Naruto's flank. "Who's out there?" He scanned the mist as he readied himself, waiting for the spear to impale him. "Naruto, is that you? Thanks, Celestia, now I can find help looking for poor Scootaloo." Naruto's eyes strained as his horn began to glow a vermilion light, as a figure walked out of the mist. He gazed at the mare standing before him as he breathed a sigh of relief as the zebra walked out, and glanced at the fallen two ponies. "Aha, so my aim did strike true, too bad there is still more to do." He panicked as the zebra slowly pulled the spear from Applejack's head, rolling it across the ground as blood oozed from where the spear had once been. "Don't be alarmed, my dear friend, all these ponies today will have to meet an unfortunate end." The zebra stared brightly as Naruto's horn grew brighter and lashed out spastically, one tendril impaling itself into the pony next to him, his magic cauterizing the wound as all forms of movement stopped. His control waned as Sakura backed away from the monstrous power. "Naruto, calm down, let me explain this without you burning the town." The tendrils of magic whipped back and forth, destroying whatever it came into contact with. "Now listen closely and you will hear how Ponyville came to be like this to dear. It all started with the mare named Pinkie Pie. The confectionery baking one visited my shack in search of some rye. She didn't find what she needs, so she began to leave in a huff, but not before taking a potion among other stuff. She mixed it into her cupcake batch. Little did she know the trouble she would soon unhatch. My brew was special, you see, it was something that made a zombie." The tendrils of magic died down as he settled, his quelling hatred now turned into concern as Sakura kept talking. The batch of cupcakes went over well, and only after a few short hours Ponyville became hell. I watched Pinkie Pie plead, but she had already done the deed. Today there is no hope, but even still there is no time to mope. She stopped as his tendrils slowly started to move again, his hooves clacking in place as he watched her impatiently. "Naruto, calm down, we need to find Scootaloo while we are still here in this ghost town." His rage quelled at the mention of the young filly. He'd find her, and even if it killed him. "What about every other pony?" His voice faltered as imagined what happened to the rest if Applejack became one of them. Then what pony hadn't been transformed by Pinkie Pie's cupcake batch? His voice faltered as Sakura shook her head, giving him a subtle no. "Miss Lula Moon was the one of the few in Ponyville that refused her cupcake, claiming she didn't want anything the pink mare baked. Such a smart mare and an incredible notion, too bad that everything was set in motion. I watched her look at me, giving a silent plea. As the swarm surrounded, I had no choice but to flee." Her words rang through Naruto's head. Trixie had died, and it sounded like Sakura didn't bother lifting a hoof to help her at all. "Did you try lifting a hoof to help her, or did you run away with your tail between your legs?" His gaze hardened on the zebra as she looked at the area with nervous glance. "I did what needed to be done, even if abandoning even with my help the mare couldn't have one." He watched her back away, the spear rolling in front of her with each step she took, kicking it forward, always within reach. "I see this is where we must part ways. May both of us from here on see better days." He didn't bother with any sort of reply. He wouldn't seek vengeance or anything. Sakura would live with the guilt as she continued on, or that's what Naruto hoped she would at least. "Sakura, is there a cure?" He looked hopeful as the zebra turned towards him. If a cure at what you seek, then you must know the answer is quite bleak. Nothing can save us from this curse, so we'd better survive or fear the worst. He watched her turn away, walking towards the mist-covered night, leaving Naruto alone. Well, this sucks. He sighed to himself as he plopped his ass down on the ground. He ignored the clacking of hooves echoing through the mist. His horn blew as he wanted things to end. Hopefully a miracle would happen as the dregs of Zombinies came into the light. Most were an acquaintance of the Alicorn in some shape or form, their teeth dripping with blood and smeared with frosting as he regained his semblance, and stood his ground against the herd. Naruto's horn grew brighter as he stomped on the ground snorting. A tendril of magic hastily slammed into the nearest pony. His magic swiped furiously, trying to bat the ponies away as the swarm finally caught up with him. They bit into his wings as he pushed him back with the last of his magic. The feathers and blood marred the pony's teeth as his wings flapped irrationally, trying to calm himself as the pain settled in. He cringed as the rest of the Zombinies backed him against the wall as he cried out as Sweetie Belle bit into his leg, ripping sinews of flesh and muscle, dropping him to the ground. His scream rang out as another clamped its jaw on his throat latch, destroying any chance of him surviving this ordeal. The last few words were just gurgles of blood spewing through his throat as he laid on the ground lifeless. His body trembled as it rose from the herd, his eyes dull and lifeless as those around him. His horn never stopped glowing as it grew brighter and brighter before his body just erased itself and everything around him in magic. The only traces of Ponyville left was the deserted buildings the citizens once resided in, and the signs of blood covering the walls. The end. The violet-coated Pegasus stared with crimson eyes at her jailer, as he tried to think of anything coherent to say. Her mane swung slowly as she floated in the air, pushing clouds as the fox-painted door stood behind her. What the hell was that, Senna? His cerulean eyes cringing at the sight of he just witnessed. He didn't even know where to begin with what was wrong with his guardian Pegasus, and what did that say about him if she was that messed up? That was my rendition of a play starring you for my Nightmare Night story, wasn't it awesome? Her wings began to die down as her hooves began to touch the ground. Awesome isn't how I would put it. His stomach fell into knots as the story played again in the Ponyville of his mind. Oh please, you're just jealous that you died in my story. I'm the main character, of course. I'm pissed. Besides, who were those ponies you mentioned? Oh, those, well, I made them up for the story, but I made you believe that they were real, or at least one of them. Senna, I hate you so much right now. Keep telling yourself that, and I'll keep writing stories for you to scare little fillies on such a joyous night. Her eyes brightened as all ponies from her scripted story disappeared. Her eyes gleamed with another prospect as Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie appeared. I have an idea! The Alicorn choked on whatever bile that rose to his mouth, trying to hold in as he heard the screams of Rainbow Dash. I need some help, and maybe a cupcake. The Canterlot Hotel buzzed with excitement as their esteemed guests arrived, all bowing before the two unicorn stallions trotting casually through the lobby. The first, a withered old stallion. That coat was as gray as the mane on his back. His flank held a mark resembling a drop of water, as his tail barely swished at the scene of the hotel staff bowing before them. His eyes held years of wisdom as it scanned the staff for any sort of weakness. His search came to a disappointment, as they all seemed well trained. See, boy, the name Lula Moon strikes respect into every pony of Equestria. This is what our name brings, so don't be like your sister and throw it away on paltry things. The withered stallion watched as his companion just stared into his book, surrounded by a illo aura, seemingly dead to the world around him. Bah, stubborn mule, even Celestia's student will have a hard time beating you, and yet your nose still finds its way in between those books. His cries of outrage again seemed to fall on the deaf ears of his companion, his interest all but lost in the unicorn in front of him until the book slammed shut, getting Everpony's undivided attention, stopping the bellhop from removing the younger unicorn's bags. I'll carry my own bags, thank you. The soft voice echoed through the lobby as the book floated back into his satchel. The Lula Moon stood still as the tension began to ease through the staff. His black mane bristled as he adjusted to the newly added weight to the bags. Can some pony show us to our room? His scarlet eyes looking for anyone to deal with his grandfather, even for the slightest of moments. He would be the one dealing with him once they began their stay here, as he had come accustomed to it since Trixie had left. His navy blue coat shivered as his grandfather stood next to him, the unease between the two clear as day to any pony present. I believe it's under the name Crescent Lula Moon, or perhaps it is under my grandfather Azure Lula Moon. The trepidation between the staff left as one lone mare stepped forward, eyeing both stallions closely, the key hanging from her tail as she began to lead the way. Right this way, please, we accommodated you as asked Elder Lula Moon. Her voice held the slightest bit of fear as both unicorns walked beside her. The fear increased as they all entered the elevator. The mare couldn't imagine either one of them making small talk as they waited for them to arrive at their destination. Ah, good. It has been a great while since either of us have visited Canterlot. I'll see it many more Manhattan equine come this way indeed. The oldest of the trio smiled as they stepped off the elevator, ignoring the ache in his hooves and the look of suspicion on his grandson's face, instead processing the finer details of the hotel decor. Just think, tomorrow you'll be showing all of Equestria your own brand of magic. His mind clear as the day he'd achieve his cutie mark. Tomorrow was going to be the day that all of Equestria remembered why the name Lula Moon meant something. He was sure of that, and no pony was going to upset what he worked so desperately for. The mare led them through smirking at the glory this would bring him. Here we are. If you need anything else, please don't hesitate to ask. Her smile lingered as the eldest of the two unicorns passed her by. The other remained in the hall staring into her eyes. Thank you, miss. Your assistance is much appreciated. I don't think we'll be needing any pony's help for the remainder of our stay, so please do relax. His voice soothed the wary mare as she walked past him with the slightest smile. Now to deal with grandfather, and hopefully I'll get to finish my book then. His hooves trotted slowly into the room. It was bare of any sort of decoration, the faucets running water, and both of them knew why. It was almost a matter of time before he'd see the real side behind the elder's actions. Got anything to say now, boy? Or is that book too important to listen to your elder? His voice raised only slightly to get the message across, ripples of water hanging in the air waiting for his grandson to close the room's door. The first splash of water came crashing into him, soaking him and the walls along with it. He waited for the stallion to rise back to his hooves before slamming another torrent of water into his chest. Every pony respect me, got that. No mule has ever disrespected me, and by Celestia, not some trash that thinks he's special just like his moronic sister that abandoned him. I gave you both everything, and all either of you did was scoff in my face. You will not lose to some no-talent trash, or I swear the next time someone mentions the name Crescent Lula Moon will be in an autopsy report. His voice lowered to a hush whisper as the idle threat lingered between the two, his horn glue an aqua color as the water started to lift off the ground and head back towards the gushing sink as it began to die down before turning off. The stallion just watched as his grandfather left him drenched with water. Each step he made, his chest pounded to stop and take a breath. He was used to this sort of thing by now. The wounds were light compared to previous encounters when he was angry, and he knew why tomorrow was too important for some injury to falter his prowess. Yes, everything depended on one day to show Equestria the Lula Moon pride. He can't let any pony down tomorrow. His horn glue with a sunny yellow hue as the warm glow dried him off. Don't worry, grandfather, I'll win tomorrow. I'd bet my flank on it. His gaze turned toward his cutie mark, a playing card with a crescent moon in the center, a constant reminder of his special talent. Well, time to finish that book and hopefully go to bed without disturbing grandfather. His horn glue removing the book and gently setting it down on the table as he read the night away lost in his book, and the glowing light of his horn could be seen throughout the city. Now tell me everything, Lyra, and don't shirk the details. I mean, you are the one that brought it up after all. Bonbon looked at her lifelong filly friend Lyra, hoping for anything juicy on the newest gossip topic, Naruto Uzumaki. I mean, anything will do, Lyra. His height, the color of his mane, even the size of his horn would do. She could hear Lyra giggle at the last part. Both mares were curious about the newest Alicorn ADN. So far, Lyra was the only one of the two to see him up close, and twice at that. So here Bonbon was trying to get even the tiniest bit of information from the minty unicorn. It's complicated, Bonbon. Trust me, he isn't like Princess Celestia or Luna at all. The mint unicorn thoughts of the Alicorn as he first arrived in were dismal at best. When he arrived, Lyra honestly expected a stallion with the composure only the rulers of Equestria could match, which was dashed as soon as he appeared. The Alicorn looked more of a bumbling fool as he looked on at every pony with wide doe-like eyes. She was sure that if it wasn't for Twilight, the Alicorn would have stumbled around Canterlot as the locals gossiped on and on about him, and some pony took advantage of him. Come on, Lyra, Prince Blueblood isn't like Celestia either, Lyra, so I want more details than that. Bonbon's hooves clacked against the ground as she waited impatiently, knowing that her unicorn pal would eventually give in to her pleading, or clacking, whichever got her the answer she needed. Lyra glanced at her friend as she clacked her hooves constantly, much to her frustration. Lyra truly hated when Bonbon got like this. Stop it, please, Bonbon. The clacking never stopped as it just got louder and louder as each passing minute went by. Fine, I'll tell you, just stop it already, Bonbon. The clacking slowly died down as the mare finally stopped, letting Lyra regain her thoughts. Naruto looked stupid, really stupid the first time I saw him. The way he stared at the crowd as we all stared at him just grated on my nerves. He looked like one of those tourists that get off the train and then stare dumbfounded at the city. The thoughts of the Alicorn bothered Lyra as she only could bring herself to say the flaws in his character. It was what drew her in though. Well, what about the next time then? You're the one that said the first time. Bonbon's curiosity soon gave out as her hooves began to slowly clack against the ground in anticipation, before coming to a sudden stop, remembering Lyra's distaste for such loud and unnecessary noise. He was different the second time, not the timid wallflower I expected him to be. Lyra watched Bonbon nod as the gleam of anticipation twinkled in her eyes, waiting for her to start again. He was different the second time I saw him, like the awe of Canterlot wore off and everything around of him lost the appeal, or I could be imagining that. Anyways, he got in a fight with Princess Luna, which I think now that they are meeting up later. Lyra could literally see the cogs running inside Bonbon's head as she processed the information. Well, you think on that, and I'm going to practice now if you don't mind. She glanced at the unicorn as she prepared herself, letting her harp glow as the strings hummed, waiting to be plucked. Her hoof barely grazed the first chord as the magic rang out, echoing through the city as she played, practicing under the full moon. Naruto glanced at the present company. Princess Luna had come, but sadly she didn't come alone. Can you tell me why those guards are here? He scanned the two as both glared back at the Alicorn. We are most sorry, Naruto, but my sister Celestia insisted on Pegasus guards to protect me from wary citizens. It's more for their safety than ours. He could see the sincerity as the Alicorn pleaded her heart out to him. If he is disappointed, we can offer another night outing, perhaps at a later date, say 3 moons from now. Every pony stared at the orange Alicorn, some hoping for him to call it quits, while Luna just stared, hoping for any answer. Nah, that won't be necessary. I'll just have to think of something different then. His eyes scanned the group of guards as their glare intensified, as they ruined the duo's night watching over the couple. Pray tell, what do have in store for we, or does thou expect we to think of our nightly acti? She stopped as their eyes met. Mischief was all she could see in those eyes, reminding her of the first time she had met him. Naruto watched as the 2 Pegasus guards looked away as they both talked. He leaned closer as his horn touched the tip of her head. Tag, you're it. He smiled as he galloped down the light-covered streets, his ears trying to listen over the constant clack of his hooves. He took the nearest left, traveling down a deserted street before stopping, looking for the rest of his company to catch up. The Pegasus guard shadows covered the ground below him. They grew as the Pegasus shadows came closer towards the Alicorn, before finally landing in front of him. Uzumaki, we are not here for the leisure and games of one of Celestia's relatives. You're hindering our duty to protect the rulers of Equestria. What do you have to say for yourself? I'm sorry, but it's just a little fun, to lighten the mood. The princess needs something to cheer her up after I kept her busy all day, especially since I was the last one to sign up for this competition. His response didn't have the effect he wanted as the 2 Pegasus stepped forward, both nodding in agreement. We think you are offending the princess with your silly notions and games, yet she doesn't have the heart to tell you to leave her alone. Naruto didn't gain the chance to reply as the clacking of hooves stopped right next to him. We don't feel offended by Uzumaki's playful nature, or is it your duty to think for we as well? Naruto felt the warmth of Luna as she stood next to him, her wing touching his as she stood in front of her escorts. We believe that both of thine have done your duty. We shall return when our business is done. The guards shuffled in place as the wings began to hesitantly flap, flying back to Canterlot Castle. Thanks, Luna, I could have handled them though. The Alicorn stood in the lamp-lit street as Luna laughed at the thought of him getting into even deeper trouble. "Hey, come on, I can be serious. I saved you, didn't I?" His voice a whisper as they now stood in front of each other. "We know what you can do all too well, and we shall never forget your thoughtless deed, Naruto." Her voice fluttered as she inched towards him. Her nervousness was beginning to override any courage she had as the gap closed inch by inch, before their muzzles met. Kissing Luna the first time was something the blonde barely registered at the time. The taste of saffron was evident. This was more of a warm cream as her tongue touched his wrestling for a short brief dominance, before parting, letting his nose inhale the scent of saffron tickled his senses. "Luna, did you mean that?" His body felt ablaze as the kiss had yet to wear off, even as Luna backed away from him. "We were the one that initiated the kiss, so yes, we believe that explains everything we feel for you, Naruto." Luna stood opposite across from Naruto in the street, the taste of vanilla on the tip of her tongue a constant reminder of what she had just done. "Do thou not feel the same for me?" Her hooves gave a nervous shuffle as she waited for him to speak. "I do feel the same, but I can't explain. It's more than that. Can I have some time to think about it?" He could see her wings stretch out as the lights dimmed around her. With a flap she rose off the ground and stared at Naruto. "Naruto, time is something you request, then on the day of the finale we shall speak. Until then I wish you good luck." Naruto didn't need to see the tears rolling down her face as she flew away in sadness. "I'm sorry." His whisper reached no one on the desolate night as trotted back to his room, contemplating what he just did, and what just happened. Naruto looked on in amazement as he stood next to Celestia. Knows how many unicorns, as every pony waited for Celestia to grace them with her presence. Every unicorn was gathered in the Canterlot garden, each decorated with a number on their right flank. Naruto glanced at his own. 37 wasn't exactly too bad for his category. He'd seen countless ponies trade numbers in their respective category, not counting the idle gossip of every pony of the crowd watching the magical show ponies. This whole contest was bigger than he ever imagined. "Naruto, there you are. Me and Rarity searched all over for you after we signed up for the competition." Twilight smiled as she pushed her way through the rest of crowd as Naruto watched it all unfold comically, a number 14 on her flank. "Sorry, Twilight, I had to practice something I just thought of for the competition." He could see the small twinkle in her eye as she wanted more information on the subject. "I'm not telling you a thing that could help or harm your performance, so you go think of something to do in your category." Naruto didn't look her straight in the eye as he would most likely fall for whatever face she made. "Look, the guards are coming, so buck up. Please bow for both of Equestria's ruler, Princess Celestia and Princess Luna." Naruto watched as every pony kneeled for the equine royalty, himself included. His eye met Luna as a frown began to form across her face. "Please stand, every pony. Today isn't about me or my sister Luna. You all are here to show Equestria your magic and make every pony you know proud of having such talented friend." Naruto smiled as every pony rose to greet Celestia's smiling face. "Now, to keep the contest as impartial as possible, we have judges from all across Equestria. Luna has made sure that they were the brightest of their respective fields." Naruto could see a gleam of disapproval in Luna's eyes as he refused to meet Celestia's like every other unicorn was doing. "Luna and 3 other judges will be watching each of your performances and then finally choose a winner of each category." Celestia smiled as she watched the 2 alicorns, reminding her of the lack of love life she had. "All the participants of the newest spells, please be ready when you enter the waiting tent for your number to be called, while every pony else prepare for your category to come up." Naruto just backed away, now interested in everything that was about to unfold, as he followed the rest of the herd into the tent. Lyra just stared in disbelief as the number of ponies seemed to increase as they all fit into this one cramped tent. She could only cry out as the number of competition truly made her head spin at the thought of beating all of these equine. Normally she didn't suffer from stage fright, but she had yet to perform for this many ponies and she never had to compete against any pony in her recitals. "Will Sparkler please come forth? You may begin your demonstration." Lyra froze as she watched the tent flaps as the judges took their places as the first unicorn trotted forward. She could see the rest of the competition as they all gathered around the opening waiting for him to be critiqued by the judges. "This is so nerve-wracking." She inwardly groaned as Sparkler came trotting past them all, his face full of disappointment as the next pony went to dazzle the crowd and judges. Only 7 more to go, Lyra, I can do this. Her minty mane bristled as she felt something brush across her hindquarters and backside. I swear if some cop's another Fae. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought it was someone else. Lyra's coat reddened as Tangelo's eyes met cerulean blue, and there before her stood Naruto. Her mind drew up the only possible thing as Bonbon's gossiping fantasies came to mind. It's alright, it was my wing's fault. Naruto watched on as the unicorn's cheeks became redder and redder as got closer and closer to her frame. Do you mind if I stand here? I want to see how they judge every pony. Naruto gave Lyra a small smile as his gaze went towards her flank, noticing the number 9 adorning it. It's alright, please stay, nothing to worry about. My name is Lyra Heartstrings, and everyone knows you, it's Naruto Uzumaki. Lyra's nervousness didn't drop as the 5th pony came walking back, a few tears adorning her face. She needed someone here, and if he wanted to talk she would oblige him, prince or not. Well, you can see how they do it, just not hear anything. See, Celestia put up a sound barrier that distorts what they say so no pony knows what they are saying, so it's any pony's guess. Well, that's the rumor at least. She smiled as he nodded, now turning his attention towards her. So is it true, are you a prince like every pony has said? Now she was certain that now the Alicorn was nervous as she was. Please just call me Naruto, and about that prince talk, can you kind of drop it? Celestia told me not to talk about it, and I'm sure that includes every pony else. Naruto just smiled as the mint unicorn slowly backed away, looking as if she angered him somehow. I'm sorry, it's just I made a promise and I intend to keep it. He could feel the stares as he stopped the subject from becoming a full-blown conversation as another stallion came back, the first to have an actual smile adorning his face. So only a few ponies left until you have to compete. He seemed to note the nervous laugh of his Tangelo-eyed companion as she looked on as the next pony walked past them. Number 8, please step forward. Lyra sighed as her horn grew, bringing her harp next to her as she scanned over it one last time as her magic plucked each string, letting the music fall onto the preparing ponies, as they all slightly smiled. Everything is in order, all I need to do is wow the judges and then I will be going to the gala. She didn't bother listening to anything else as the word number 9 rang out through the room. The small smile adorned the unicorn's face as she passed him by, walking out to the roaring crowd watching her. She watched in amazement as she slowly walked toward the center of the garden. The crowd's hooves stomped as the judges looked on as her harp settled itself on the ground. My name is Princess Luna, and I will be judging you along with Spirit Walker and Rune. Please state your name and the magic that you intend to show us today. Lyra watched as the Alicorn and the rest of the judges staring on at her, waiting for her to begin. My name is Lyra Heartstrings, and the spell I want to show is what I like to call echo magic. I made this for my concerts since I couldn't invest in a speaker system, and believe it would help aspiring musicians as it helped myself. She stared on at the judges as the judges marked something down. I'll begin now. She ignored the booing of the crowd around her as the harp began to play, sending notes throughout the garden, quieting the crowd. The melody touching all those around as they all seemed in love with song as each string was plucked, as the melody soon to pick up pace, as the gong rang out through the beautiful song. Lyra lost all thought as she played her harp before a large gong rang out through her ears. Tangelo met Cyan as the music stopped and looked down at the ground. You may go now. Tell the stage hand to give us time to deliberate on our decision before sending in the next competitor. Lyra's eyes burned as she held back the tears that threatened to spill out. She wanted more time, even a few more seconds would have helped wrap up her symphony. Naruto watched her trot past by everyone stopping in front of the stagehand as she walked to the back corner. Naruto just watched as the young mare cried her eyes out, going unnoticed by the rest of the competition. Naruto did the only thing he could in the situation, comfort the minty unicorn as she cried. Crescent watched the shuffling of every pony as they all tried making small talk with the competition. Even a few had tried to approach him asking whatever he was reading before scampering off talking to someone else. Equestrian bylaws, laws that you should know for all of Equestria. I have a copy of that somewhere, where in the library in Ponyville. Oh, I'm sorry for bothering you, it's just you're the only one with a book, and well, I was bored and couldn't help but, well, my name isn't Bored, it's Twilight Sparkle actually. Sorry, I'll leave. He watched as a lavender mare shuffle her hooves as the book shut, gaining her attention. Please stay, Twilight, was it? You are Celestia's student, right? I wanted to meet you in person ever since news of you defeating Nightmare Moon reached Manhattan. I imagined you to be much older, but still it is a pleasure to meet you. My name is Lula Moon. He could see the sparkle in her eyes as his name left his lips in hushed tone. He was sure that she had as many questions as he had for her, if not a few less. Do you mind if we talk then? I have so many things to ask the mayor who saved Equestria, and I can't think of a better person to ask than you. Only smiles were written across both unicorns as they idly chatted among themselves, almost ignoring the world around them. The Grace category's number 1, you are up. Well, that is my number. Hopefully you will be seeing me soon enough. He could see her already nodding as he left and entered the cheering crowd, his smile never leaving his muzzle. The crowd roared as he stood center stage staring at the judges, wondering what to do as the cheering began to die down as a judge stood. We are the judges of this part of the competition. My name is Spirit Walker. The others beside me are Princess Luna herself and Rune. We asked to perform something graceful and majestic after you finish your introduction. When you stop talking, your time begins. He watched as the crowd waited for him to begin his introduction, his eyes scanning the entirety, trying to think of something feasible. My name is Lula Moon. His horn began to glow a sunny hue as a card floated through the air before multiplying, stopping as thousands of cards covered the air above the crowd. His eyes scanning the crowds as the cards fell towards them, catching themselves in midair as countless ponies reached out to catch one for a souvenir. His eyes darted left as the cards sprang to life, gathering together, taking the form of an alicorn. Its body billowed with a rosy tint-colored coat as it stood as tall as a house, and its eyes staring down at the judges as its hoof touched the ground. Its mane fluttered in the sky as the sweat began dripping down his forehead as his horn grew brighter, letting out another stream of magic. The constructed alicorn wings whipped in the air, startling the ones that watched it hypnotically. Time, please remove your construct and send in the next contestant. Crescent only nodded as the card came tumbling down, disappearing as it touched the ground, relieving himself of the magical burden. He slowly trotted back to the tent, ignoring the cheers of the crowd, as all he wanted was a nice and quiet place to nap, as his magic came back to him. Twilight watched Crescent come back, and she knew right away he did something that took such a great toll on his magic. It wasn't uncommon to see a unicorn overexert themselves. She knew firsthand about using too much magic, and what harm it could do to you, so it wasn't a big surprise when he laid down on the grass, fast asleep. She watched as the rest of the unicorns surrounded him, some lost in thought, others teasing him while he slept, and all probably wondering what he did to make him so exhausted in the first place. She watched as other unicorns passed by her, all with the same tired look on their faces. None ever collapsed but her new friend Crescent. Hours passed as the hot sun seemed to be finally lowering for night to come. Every pony that signed up for the defensive spell category, please prepare and be ready when I call your number. She watched as stallions all across the tent preparing themselves, letting their horn glow as a bubble appeared thanks to their magical aura. Number 1, please step forward and begin, please. Twilight didn't bother with anything else as she prepared herself with what was to come. The stallions passed one by one as she waited her turn. Number 14, please step forward. Twilight nodded as she walked out to the crowd as they all stared in silence as she stopped in front of the judges. Number 14, you are much different than I imagined you to be. No matter, my name is Rune, and the others beside me are your judges, Princess Luna and Spirit Walker. You must protect this apple from the guard for an allotted time or until it pops. Twilight looked at them all as she watched the ball roll towards her, nothing short of a children's toy. Okay, let the trial begin. Twilight watched as the guard walked out, his helmet gleaming in the sunlight as he snickered as he looked on at his competition. Twilight watched as countless spears floated towards her ball, all dead set on piercing it, the largest thrown through the air dead center, as it missed, only hitting the ground as the ball appeared next to Twilight. She watched him, the poor stallion, try his damnedest to even approach the ball, as every attempt made him seem foolish even as the spears came closer and closer to Twilight. Even as the last spear landed a few inches away from the mare, the ball remained safe. Time. Every pony watched as the Unicron's horn lost their magical glow as they both nodded to each other. She felt winded as she made her way back, smiling at the work she had done. She doubted no pony did as well as her, and she knew Celestia had to be proud of how far she had come since her stay in Ponyville. Naruto watched every pony walk in and out, as he comforted the mint mare sleeping under his wing. Her crying stopped as soon as the next competition started, and he was sure she fell asleep not soon afterwards. He listened to Lyra's plight as her friend Bonbon put so much faith in the poor mare to help get them both a ticket to the gala. She stressed herself out, so now here Naruto had taken it upon himself to help the two mares. Number 37, please come forward. Naruto slowly rose, waking Lyra as he trotted through the unicorn's gaze as he finally passed through the tent's flaps. The crowd exploded as he stepped out of the tent. The cheers increased as they realized who he was. Prince Naruto echoed through the gardens of Canterlot. Quiet, every pony, as we begin the introduction of our last participant. The crowd settled as she glanced down at Naruto, her scion glaring silently at him. Number 37, please state your name officially if you would please. Luna glanced at the Alicorn as he kicked his front left hoof across the ground. Please, so we can deliberate on our last choice, or would you like us to skip over your application? Naruto didn't bother rising to the threat as he had brought Luna's mood upon himself, and he'd be the one that dealt with it after this was all over. The crowd murmured as he stared on at Celestia, looking for some sort of approval, and with a hesitant nod he grinned at what she unleashed. My name is Prince Naruto Uzumaki. He smiled as the crowd stared in silence, all speechless as their declarations came true. Indeed, Prince Naruto, it has been many years since the Alicorn has competed, so we had to adjust our program for you. Cyan eyes hardened as Naruto glared right back at her. So we have decided to pit you against a barrier of my creation. The rules are as follows, Prince. You must pop the ball within the time limit, or find a way to pierce his defenses for a proper grade. Rune, Spirit Walker, and my dear sister will judge you on your performance. The Alicorn smiled as she floated down to meet him eye to eye. Her horn glue as the smallest barrier wrapped around the ball as it stood still. Now come, Uzumaki, show me something new. Naruto flinched as the ball became enveloped in a blue aura as it stopped in place. Find something new then, glad I came prepared then. No pony looked away as his horn glue with a vermilion color as a magical aura surrounded him, before clinging to his frame. His orange coat became a more crimson color as it clung to his frame, taking the shape of another tail. It whipped in the air as it flickered back and forth with magical energy as it swiped at the ball, embedding it into the ground, popping under the pressure formed the blow. Anything else? He laughed as the crowd roared in approval as the magic around him disappeared. Fortunately, Celestia was the first to regain her composure as her voice rang out through the crowd. Prince Naruto, please go and gather the rest of the competitors as we choose the winner of our glorious celebration. She laughed as he nodded, passing by her stunned sister to fetch every pony else. The minutes passed as they all trotted out of the tent, each looking on as the crowd smiled at the guts of each competitor. They all waited as both princesses stood ready to announce the winners. And the winner is, sorry, but you will have to wait a few more minutes as I announce the winner of our categories. The crowd paused as Luna's voice echoed through the garden, every pony watching her as she skimmed the paper again. Now to our first category, the winner of our newest spell is Lyra Heartstrings. She glanced as the mint unicorn stepped forward, tears of joy rolling down her cheek as the crowd pushed her to the front. I'm sure you have many things you want to say, but let me announce the rest of the competition's winners first. Crescent Lula Moon, Naruto Uzumaki, and Twilight Sparkle, please come forward. You all displayed magical talent which won you your respective categories. She watched as the three walked forward, all glancing at the crowd around them. Each winner is entitled to one ticket for the Grand Galloping Gala, and a reasonable request from Princess Celestia or myself. She watched them all glance at each other, all wanting to speak up, even as she cleared her throat. Crescent Lula Moon, it was wonderful seeing every pony compete, but you stood out as you used your magic to create such a masterpiece that came to life and even startled many equestrians with its detail. So it is with great honor to grant you as the grand winner of this year's MTP. I hope you use both requests to their fullest extent. Luna stared on as he smiled at the proclamation as the crowd cheered on as one unicorn left the stands. You may now speak up if you wish to do so. We must prepare for the rising night, so please turn your attention to my beloved sister. Luna's wings flapped as she flew off towards Canterlot Castle, leaving two Alicorns frustrated in her wake as they both decided on what to do. I apologize every pony on my sister's behalf. These past days have been troubling for her. I assure you she will be here to participate in many of the other festivities. Celestia smiled as her eyes followed each of the winners as they all stared at her impatiently. Does any of you wish to speak up? I'm here to listen and possibly help if reasonable enough. Celestia watched as Lyra stepped forward, her Tangelo eyes quivering in anticipation. Princess Celestia, may I have another ticket to the Grand Galloping Gala? See, I promised my friend Bonbon we would go together if I won this year. Her hoof stomped on the ground as she could hear the small thanks as Bonbon's voice echoed through the crowd. Lyra could only smile as she watched Celestia walk towards her. I'm sure we can accommodate such a simple request. Is there anyone else with a request, or may we call it a day for now? Celestia watched as her pupil took a hoof forward as every pony watched in wonder, trying to figure out what Twilight would ask for. Are you sure you want to ask me something, Twilight? Usually you are the first to speak up and the last to ask for anything. Celestia watched her favorite pupil's eye quiver. Her hooves shook in place of the anticipation of what Twilight would do. The crowd gasped as the mare took another step forward. Twilight's hesitance disappeared as she met her longtime mentor's eyes with the same intensity she had faced Nightmare Moon with. I've meant to ask this since my stay in Ponyville. Can I have some books from the Canterlot library? The ones in Ponyville offer great research material, but they don't offer any sort. Celestia could only smile as the pure honesty of both Mares. She smiled, nodding at the simple request as she watched her pupil back away, standing next to the stallions that stole the show, each in their own ways. Her eyes turned toward Naruto. He stood with a twinkle of excitement in his eyes, the thought of him being a prince and what it entailed. Hopefully he wouldn't let this declaration change anything about the Alicorn. She needed people as caring as him in Equestria. The other stallion was odd. Even as her gaze lingered on the card using unicorn, he didn't seem fazed. His eyes looked on almost impatiently as she looked for any other sort of emotion. Sadly, she could only see desperation to go with the impatience clear in his eyes. Boy, you better not have wasted those requests on something frivolous. The spark of fear emerged as a withered old stallion approached the competition, bowing before Celestia as he settled next to Crescent. Go ahead, boy, make the request. All of Equestria is watching. Make your ancestors proud, make your mother proud by denouncing that trash you call a sibling. Blood littered the air as a tendril of magic slammed into Azure, sending him crashing onto the ground. A slight scratch adorned his muzzle as the crowd glanced at the events unfolding as Naruto stepped forward. Boy, what do you think you are doing? Mind your own business, gutter trash. It seems any piece of filth can become a prince. I offer my deepest condolences, Celestia. No matter, the Lula Moon line would never bother with such demeaning matters. His voice croaked out as he pushed himself off the ground, watching Celestia and the foolish Alicorn that had just attacked him. Who cares what you offer? Which pony gives a $2 about what some old geezer has to say? No one cares about some stupid name Lula Moon or what you have to say, so sit down, shut up, or buck and leave. His tail whipped in anger as he gazed at the older stallion backing away from him. You don't have any spine, do you? His anger rose as the sneer shone across his face as Crescent finally stepped forward, only for Naruto to block him off. I know it's not my place, but don't be his tool, you are better than that. Naruto's pleas fell flat as he watched the unicorn stop in front of Celestia. Celestia, I have only one request for you. Please allow me to join the Royal Equestrian Guard. He stared on as she kneeled, her head down, gently tapping his left shoulder with her horn, knighting the unicorn as he just backed away, smiling. Thank you, Celestia, you have no idea what this means to me. His mane bristled with excitement as he imagined the people he would meet protecting both Princess Celestia and Luna, ignoring the constant verbal lashing his grandfather was giving him, as the guards dragged Azure away. Naruto just stared on at everything unfolded around him. He was glad everything was finally settling down, the crowd whispering to each other, a reminder of the small date they had and the events that transpired leading up to this. She left him in a difficult spot, and yet still here he was about to settle things with the Alicorn or risk losing someone precious to him. So I guess since everybody else is making their requests, I should make mine as well. All eyes settled on him. His neck stretched out as prepared himself for a quick takeoff. I want to talk to Luna alone. The request echoed through the garden as the moon slowly rose in the sky. The twinkle of starlight lit the garden in a spectrum of colors, stealing the attention away from the blonde. I'm sure that she wouldn't mind either, so please go right ahead. I'm sure you have much to discuss. She's in the main chamber where we had our own discussion. Naruto could only nod as he backed away before taking off, ready to settle everything with the Princess of the Night. Good luck, Naruto. Luna isn't the easiest to talk with. Luna watched as the moon rose, the stars parting ways for her magic. The hoofsteps echoing through the chamber. She knew Naruto was coming. The large amount of magic was undeniably his and no pony else's. Even as the doors opened, she never hesitated in what she planned for the Alicorn that stole her heart. We were expecting you much later, but we guess that is part of your charm, isn't it? The door closed as Naruto entered, her magic caressing his muzzle as Luna began to walk forward. With each step, the pressure of her presence began to grow. Don't do that. Cerulean eyes shined as his face moved away from the small magic caressing it. I wanted to talk to you about yesterday. He watched the pain slowly start to show in her eyes as he brought it up. Why are you rushing things? Naruto waited as Luna poked her hoof into the floor, trying to think of some sort of answer. We just wanted to make sure you returned the sentiment, Naruto. If you did and we consummated our love, then I would know you loved me in return. That is the traditional Canterlot way. You mean the old Canterlot way, right? He shook his head as the Alicorn slowly nodded her head. You can't do things like that anymore, Luna. Canterlot has changed, the rules are different, fro. Naruto didn't finish. He understood what was going on mid-sentence. She was still stuck in the past. The tears streaming down Luna's cheeks only made him feel more guilt for pressing the matter. We know that. We knew it when Celestia and I returned to Canterlot. Everything has changed and it keeps changing, and I don't know how to handle it, Uzumaki. We have been gone for 1,000 years, and the first thing we did upon my return was trying to enslave my own people. I'm out of touch with my kingdom, Uzumaki, and even as it became clear to me since my return, we still wanted to be with you though. We wanted you to stay with me. You didn't care about what I did before. Even after nearly killing you, you still did everything to save me and succeeded. Naruto, we are grateful you spared our life. Perhaps we should part ways. It is better this way. Her voice croaked as she turned away from him. The tears kept streaming down her face. The only sound were the few sobs coming from her and the clacking of his hooves. You don't mean that last part, Luna. You cannot possibly mean that. His voice echoed through the chamber as he walked closer, getting no response from the Alicorn. You can ignore me all you want, but this isn't what you want, and I don't want this either. I understand you care for me like that. I just don't know what to do with it. Can't we do things slowly? His question echoed through the chamber as the sobbing stopped. Luna, I'm not going to promise you things will be better, and I'm not going to stay in Canterlot. But I can promise this: I'll be there when you need me, and I'll always be happy to help. Naruto watched as the Alicorn slowly turned toward him. Puffy cyan eyes met his own. This time he took the initiative as he pressed his lips against her, a clumsy kiss. I'm going back to Ponyville tomorrow. It has been fun here, but it's still not the same. Next time we meet, I want to see smiling face, okay? Naruto gave her another quick kiss as he trotted away, leaving the Princess of the Night alone to stew in her own thoughts. The next day. Naruto, may I ask why we are leaving today? I was hoping to spend some time in Canterlot's fashion district to learn of any upcoming trends that might help me out. Rarity stared on as Naruto's wings flapped in anticipation, a nervous twitch she had come to realize staying with him. You can stay if you want, Rarity. I made someone a promise, so I want to keep it. I'm waiting for the train to come, and I'm sure Twilight and Spike are coming with, so the trip back won't be lonely. Naruto just stared on as he waited for the train to come. A few steps rung in Naruto's ears as he stood still. Rarity, go on. I'll be alright. Twilight is coming and I can't get in any trouble standing still. His neck cracked as he turned toward the nearby pony, his eyes meeting a navy blue coat. Gah, it's you. I thought you were a soldier now. There stood the winner of yesterday's competition, Crescent Lula Moon, standing next to him. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Celestia gave me an important mission last night. Naruto could only smile as he looked down at the guy that did something he wanted to achieve for so long. He couldn't help but admire the trait. I am here to help you in any way possible, while you reside in Ponyville, so until then meet your new roomie. The enthusiasm was misplaced as Naruto watched the unicorn stomp his hoof into the ground in annoyance. I wanted something more exciting, Naruto, or at the very least to be Luna or Celestia's guard. At least then I would have had something to do in my spare time, like study the history of Equestria. You know it's not my fault you were assigned to watch over me. Besides, can't you use that last request you have? I'm sure Celestia would assign you her royal guardsman or something if you asked. He watched as the unicorn shook his head. I'm not wasting my last request on something like that. I'm sure I can deal with the dull life in Ponyville. It's not like I'll be hard-pressed to do anything dangerous. His sigh rung out as Naruto looked on irritated. What about your grandpa then? Can he help? No, he'd been arrested for his ludicrous behavior at the ceremony. Along with my glowing account of his behavior towards countless Manhattan locals and family members, he should be getting out of prison about the time I'm his age. So what you're saying is we are stuck with each other for the time being? He could see the slow nod as the train pulled in, Rarity passing the stallion duo, as the hoof steps of another mare passed by them, slipping a piece of paper under his wings. Well, come on then, Twilight is here and you have to figure out what you are going to do with your residence problem in Ponyville. His mind slipped off into thought, as he looked on at the piece of paper. Dear Naruto, I hope you get this, otherwise this would be kind of awkward. I want to thank you for your words of encouragement to my sister. I assure you I will not do anything to hamper what you have going on between the two of you. Just make my sister happy. She's had 1,000 years of loneliness, and yet you cleared that void in a single night. I hope you find your newest companion to your liking. He's inexperienced, but what better way to gain some if not to protect my favorite cousin? Please do take care and watch over my pupil, as I imagine with the two of you in Ponyville will bring life back to the town, or perhaps more. Sincerely yours, Princess Celestia. P.S. Your accommodations in Ponyville have been taken care of. Please ask Twilight about the key. Naruto stared on at his four companions all talking with each other, as the train took off taking them all home. Ponyville, here I come. Appaloosa. A few days later. In the middle of the bustling settlement stood a large wagon. Stood in the center of town. A unicorn propped against it, her grayish-violet eyes scanning a 4-day-old newspaper held in midair with a magenta aura. Her bright azure coat sprinkled with flakes of dust, her cornflower blue mane clung draped behind her ear. Prince of Ponyville dealt a staggering loss at the hooves of a Lula Moon. The Mar just grit her teeth as the stallion's voice reached her ears. You know, miss, you've been staring at that same page for the last 3 days. You'd think that a sophisticated mare like yourself would read the current news or something more fancy-like. The mare scoffed as the paper lowered to the most irritating pony she had ever met in all of Equestria, and his name was Brayburn. The pistachio eyes always cheerful and full of life, and never did she see him frown. It just irritated the buck out of her. Well, we all can't wait for your next performance here at Appaloosa. His voice raised a few pitches as he stated the settlement's name once again, and from what she could tell this was the 27th time since her arrival. Brayburn, Trixie must take her leave. This place has been fun, but Trixie is needed elsewhere, Ponyville specifically. Her violet eyes fell back on the paper, ignoring the hoof ruining the article. Trixie would care deeply if you would remove your hoof from the paper. I won't embarrass you in front of the town. The hoof slowly removed itself. Trixie could only huff in disappointment as the stallion didn't leave. Is there a reason you haven't left Trixie's presence? The paper lowered the slightest bit to look the annoyance dead in the eyes. Brayburn looked on, his eyes unrelenting, trying to get the showmare to do something else, as each second chipped away at his already thin patience. Please, Miss Trixie, do something else, like one of those magic shows you're good at. His voice pleaded with the mare as her eyes averted and the magenta aura disappeared as the paper fell to the ground. So you're going to stay for another day? His hat furrowed as the mare walked away. The wagon slowly lurched forward, its wheels glowing and rolled in rhythm to the showmare trot. No, Trixie isn't going to stay in Appaloosa. The great and powerful Trixie is a traveling showmare and Trixie intends to keep it that way. Do not persist any further. Trixie's mind is made up. Any more of this, and you risk a punishment that Trixie saves for a few that dare try to upstage her. She paused, waiting for anything as the mare began her steady pace out, entering the edge of town as the male's voice rang out. Please, Miss Trixie, wait a second. The stallion's voice only sounded like a desperate plea to the magical equine's ears. I have an idea for you, just hear me out. What if you took the train instead? I'm sure it's much safer and easier to get to Ponyville than walking through a desert all alone. The stallion looked on as he waited for a response from the showmare. Trixie doesn't believe the conductor and train company will allow the wagon to be added as an extra cart, so taking a train would only hamper Trixie's abilities, which makes walking towards Ponyville the only viable option. She could practically hear the gears roll in the young stallion's head as he watched her drag the wagon into the unforgiving desert. Ponyville 1.5 weeks later. The sun had slowly began to shine on the Apple Acres farm, as 3 different equines stood around one Naruto Uzumaki covered in mud. Come on Naruto, you're doing it wrong. Your posture is correct, you just need some uplift. Try using your magic this time. One Cyan Pegasus sighed as she just shook her head in irritation. We got about another hour before I have to go Naruto, the weather patrol needs me today. Dash could only watch as Applejack assisted the Alicorn pulling him out of the mud. You want me to help clean you up, Naruto? She ignored the small snicker from the other stallion with them. His scarlet eyes followed her as looked on, trying to gauge the situation. Don't let Crescent ruffle your feathers, Rainbow. He's just laughing at Naruto's attempts at flight, nothing else, I assure ya. Applejack just shook her head as Naruto finally picked the rest of himself up, glaring at his bodyguard. She could see the Pegasus' reason to jump on the unicorn's case. Even Applejack was hesitant to trust the unicorn at first, but he earned her trust assisting Naruto and Big Mac on the farm. Crescent, could you apologize to Rainbow and clear things up, and after that these two right here get ready to start plowing the field. Applejack just watched as the two shuddered in sync with each other, as they both remembered the hours of working on the Apple Acres farm. Rainbow Dash, I'm really sorry, I never meant to offend you. It's just Naruto is going to begin learning some magic under Twilight. And if her basic magic theory is anything to go by, then I can't wait to see his reaction to everything else she has to teach them. His legs clocked together as he stared on at the Pegasus, watching the little anger fade from her face, replacing it with a small smile. So I hope this apology is enough for you, as it's all I have to my name until I work out something about my payment with Princess Celestia. He could see the Alicorn grumble under his breath as the unicorn got a small nod of acknowledgement from the Cyan Pegasus. So it brings me up with another question, may Naruto and I go ahead towards Twilight's today. You've seen how the poor mare is with preparations. Instead of letting her make things much more complicated than they already should be, I wanted Naruto to catch her off guard and get the mare to lighten up on the book reading. Crescent could see the doubt in both mares' eyes as they both stared him down, trying to detect any sort of lies in what he just said. Too bad the two magic-using equestrians knew that Twilight would shoo them off until the last preparations were complete. I reckon it's fine today, just don't make it a habit. Naruto made things easier for Big Mac on plowing the fields, and you help with other things, so we are expecting you during apple bucking season. Naruto could only nod dumbly as he realized that his bodyguard was actually helping him play hooky for the day. Tell me how it goes, I'm sure you'll have something to tell us tomorrow then. Naruto couldn't help but feel bad as he just nodded, helping the unicorn lie to the most honest pony he ever met. So you're telling me that you and Naruto are going to convince Egghead to stop her lesson making just because you arrived early? Crescent nodded as the mare only flew towards him, hoping for some sort of real answer from him. Come on, tell me what you're really going to do and I'll let you both go and do whatever you want. Crescent shuddered as Rainbow Dash whispered into his ear, her mane brushing against his face, letting the sweet smell of cinnamon filling his nostrils. Come on, I'm sure it's nothing that bad. Her voice constantly teasing as she pulled back for him to whisper in her ear. Naruto could only stare on as the Pegasus mare backed away from the unicorn, any prodding gone as they both grinned at each other. You coming, Crescent? Naruto's watched as the unicorn ran towards him, grinning ear to ear as they headed towards Twilight. Outside Ponyville. A wagon stopped just outside of the small town, the unicorn riding inside of peeked out of the curtain flaps as a small smile crossed her lips. The Prince of Ponyville and the famed student of Celestia all in one sitting. Trixie believes that this showmare will upstage the simpletons, especially if he did it, so can Trixie. Her horn blew as one simple flyer flew into the air, holding itself above the bustling crowd as copies appeared in thin air, dropping on to the unsuspecting ponies. The great and powerful Trixie now must wait as everything falls in place. Trixie could only imagine the dejected face as she stood proudly over Naruto Uzumaki. Little did she know the chaos she would unfold. The great and powerful Trixie wants to welcome this place as her next stop to Canterlot. Trixie also wishes the best and brightest of this fair place to show their talents center stage. Trixie will never turn down any pony wanting to rise the ranks of stardom. Meet Trixie in the center of town at 4 p.m. today. 4 collective ponies stared on as one Sweetie Belle read off the flyer, her friends all smiling at the declaration of whoever this Trixie person was. You know, Scootaloo, Snips and Snails, we should get the coolest pony we know and get her to show up and perform for us. The pale gray filly looked on as all 3 of them nodded in agreement, each thinking of the coolest person they knew, unknowingly having another filly drop in on the conversation. Sweetie Belle, you are right, and I have perfect mare in mind for the job, and that has to be Rainbow Dash. Nah, Scootaloo, you are wrong, but I have the perfect choice, has to be Naruto. I mean, he's an Alicorn, that means you almost win right away, not to mention that he's now the Prince of Ponyville. Snails, have you seen his bodyguard? He is the one that won that contest in Canterlot, so he is the one we need to win over Trixie. No way, my sister has the best choice with her fashion. I bet she'd mention through Equestria from that Trixie pony. All 4 glared at each other, each set in their own ways. Every pony, I propose we bring our choices and make them show off for us, and whoever did the best wins and proves they know who the coolest person in Equestria is. Each nodding in agreement as they all took off back to class, each waiting for the bell to ring. No pony noticing the flyer popped out of existence with a poof of smoke surrounding where it once was. There is no way any of those ponies can stand up to my sister Applejack. The last filly stared on as the rest of her competition walked off to gather their respective choices. Too bad in Apple Bloom's eyes she already knew the coolest pony in Ponyville. Oh, make special pen pals part 1. The mail never seemed so sweet. Lyra could only sigh as she looked on at the letter she received from her Ponyville friend Derpy Hooves. She had met the mail mare a long time ago on a field trip to Ponyville, and ever since the two had written to each other. Since their first meeting, the two Maras have never met face to face. Yet here she was riding the nearest train to Ponyville with her best friend Bonbon, expecting her good friend to put her up until the two could find a place to stay. I'm the worst pony that has ever lived. I'm going to Derpy's just to meet a prince who's probably forgot me 2 weeks ago. She could practically hear the romantic gossip Bonbon praising her for having the courage to follow after the stallion of her dreams. Derpy wings couldn't help but flap in excitement as she read the letter over and over again, her body plopping onto the ground as her wings stopped for a brief second. Lyra was coming to visit her in Ponyville and possibly live there with her. This was truly the best news that had ever been delivered. The male mare would be the first to admit with her wandering eye she was rarely out and about with other Pegasus folk. But the mail, that was something different. She enjoyed delivering the mail. The joy it brought to every pony's face was the only reason she became a male mare in the first place. Oh, make end. Naruto looked on at the few flyers remaining, his eyes scanning over the contents again and again, before they were all cut down as 6 cards ripped through them. So do you know this Trixie, or do all Shomaras piss you off? His eye looked on at his companion. He had said nothing after destroying any flyers he saw with a swift card cut. So far Naruto had counted 30 flyers destroyed and 17 angry Ponyville locals he had made. Fine, ignore me. Twilight needs us anyway, or are we going to lie to them? The unicorn stopped mid-hoof, letting out a large exhale as he placed his hoof down, turning toward the library's direction and continuing his destruction of any flyers in his sight. Well, at least he keeps his word. The Alicorn just sighed as he followed the brooding unicorn, wondering what the hay was going on. Spike, get ready for the next spell. Twilight watched as the dragon prepared himself, already decked out in a tuxedo and top hat, her horn glowing with a grayish orchid tint, as hair began to sprout on the scales of her assistant's upper lip, taking the form of a mustache. Spell 38 check now, maybe one more before I prepare Naru. Twilight jumped in fright as her front door slammed open, both of her future anticipated guests walking in the library tree. Crescent's eyes full of anger, something she hadn't expected to see, and Naruto's one of slight irritation. Will someone in the name of Celestia tell me why you both are here and early at that? She gazed between the two, hoping for one of the two to give her a straight answer. Naruto could only inwardly sigh to himself as Twilight stared them both down. He knew by now that Crescent wasn't going to say anything to Twilight. Sorry, Twilight, we just wanted to surprise you. It was Crescent's idea to get a head start, that is, if it's okay with you. The Alicorn sighed again as his eyes lingered on Crescent, grumbling something unintelligible to himself. It's fine, Naruto. I just thought you'd be here a few hours later, helping Applejack with the farm. She watched Naruto hide his face from her, already showing his admission of guilt, while the other just continued grumbling. So you guys are playing hooky then? The concept wasn't foreign to Twilight. She'd seen many friends in Canterlot play hooky during her training under Celestia, and each one got caught by her. The subtle nod from Naruto was all the answer Twilight needed, as the Alicorn braced himself for the verbal tirade he expected from her. Usually hooky involves goofing off or something mindless and entertaining. That's what the book says, but maybe you find this entertaining, but why would you find it fun when it is supposed to be educational? The lavender mare brain began working overtime as she tried to process the information. After a minute of thinking, Twilight decided she would put it off till later. Well, since you shown up early, I guess we can start now then. I hope you like magical theorem and the principles of magic recovery. Her eyes met only one of her guests as the door to the library shut, leaving her all alone with Naruto. Hey wait, I thought Crescent was supposed to be my assistant. Get back here now and help me educate this growing mind. Twilight grumbled as she watched Naruto pull out a small piece of paper from the back of his tail. How do you have a cheat sheet when you haven't even seen the study, mate? Oh, that bastard of a mule giving you a sneak peek. I knew not to trust him. Book lover my flank, wait till I see him again. I wasn't going to dehoove him, that's too barbaric. I was just going to give Crescent the biggest verbal lashing of his life, and then redo the curriculum with the easy parts gone. Just look at the paper, Twilight. Fine, okay, so what is so important about the great and powerful Trixie that you had to bring it to me in the middle of class? Technically class hasn't started yet, and I wanted to know if you have ever heard of this chômeur? He looked on, hoping for some sort of answer as Twilight studied the flyer. Nope, can't say that I have, Prince Naruto, but I can tell she wasn't at the competition in Canterlot, that's for sure. Why are an admirer of hers or something? Twilight watched, hoping even for the slightest bit of reaction from the Alicorn, only to come up with nothing. Huh, no way, I just saw one of the flyers and took it, that's all, and can you please stop calling me that? I have yet to do anything princely. Naruto contemplated whether or not telling Twilight about her teaching assistant's behavior regarding the flyer, ultimately deciding against telling her. He wouldn't pry in his bodyguard's personal life by asking him questions about his past. Instead, he would ask Trixie about it instead. So wanna come to Twilight? I'm sure there will be countless ponies showing up, and Trixie's magic show might be cool to watch. That's perfect, Prince Naruto, we can watch and study her form of magic. Celestia would be proud to have a student like you to teach. The Alicorn just sighed at the persistence of Twilight, and her constant teasing of his now appointed title. Sure, Twilight, that's what I meant. A few hours later. The bell rung as all the students were talking about the great and powerful Trixie's show, none more than 4 full friends, all still arguing about who had the best personal hero. So we are all agreed whoever wins knows what cool truly is. The 3 youngsters nodded in agreement as they all separated, each hopefully knowing where to go, each with only less than 30 minutes to do so. Snails sighed as he slowly picked up the pace, hoping that Naruto would be home even once, considering the countless times he attempted to visit before. His longtime friend Snips walking to his left. He was obviously here to meet his hero as well. The trip through Ponyville was abnormally long as he pushed himself through the crowd, wasting time as both apologized to another mare. They both had less than 15 minutes as they stood before the hero duo's household, ready to convince both in the sake of their pride. The house was rather small compared to what the colt had first expected. It was a 2-story house similar to the Cake's bakery, yet with plain yellow paint decorating the house, no curtains or anything decorating the outside, giving the home a rundown look. The colt slowly walked forward, his hooves shaking as he approached his idol's door, waiting on the front step as he just stood nervous as Snips looked on at him. Well, are you going to knock, or are we going to just stand here all day? The portly colt sighed as he slowly rose his front left hoof to knocking on the door, and then again for another good measure. The colt stood patiently. Do you think he's not here? Snails only sighed as Snips stated what was on his mind at the moment. What are you both doing on my porch? Naruto watched as both colts jump and turned toward his voice. This is where you answer my question and then run off, colts. He glared at the duo, his mood ruined by the teaching of one Twilight Sparkle. WWWWWE, Snips, you tell him. The golden colt just stood still, flabbergasted. The coolest pony he had met in Equestria was talking to him, and here he couldn't even bring himself to talk to him. Fine, I'll do it, Snails. What my good friend wants to ask is, Prince Naruto, will you do some magic for Ponyville when Trixie comes to town? Naruto stared at the duo of colts, his front left hoof scratching the back of his head as he looked down at them. It was odd when people called him Prince. Yes, he did make a bold declaration about it, but the title still felt stuffy to him. And Celestia help if. Yeah, sure, I don't mind. I was going anyway, so why not go all the way with this? The Alicorn couldn't help but feel pride as he watched the golden unicorn smile and just nod dumbly at him, and from the other colt's expression it looked like he hit the jackpot. So that means your bodyguard's going to show up, right, Prince Naruto? Naruto rolled his eyes as the portly colt made his intentions clear. One, don't call me Prince, I have yet to do anything remotely princely, and if that's not enough to convince you, then I will order you to stop calling me Prince. Naruto looked down at Snips, and Snails nodded dumbly again, this time in sync. He was sure by now that the two had this dumb thing down pat. Second, Crescent, my bodyguard, as you put it, probably isn't going to show up, and even if he did, I doubt he'll even consider performing for Ponyville. So sorry about that, Snips, I think. He could only sigh as the colt named Snips' lips quivered as a few tears fell from his eyes. Can't you order him to do some magic or something? He does work for you, PPPP, Naruto. He watched as a few more tears hit the ground as the colt sobbed a little. Look, want to help you out, colt, but I'm not going to boss my friend around because you wanted to see him do some magic. Come back tomorrow, I'm sure he'll give you a great magic show. Snips slowly nodded as he began to walk away back to the crowd of ponies. Snails, right? Naruto watched as the colt nodded his head. So can you tell me why your friend looked like I just ordered him to go take the historical tour of filthy riches? Barnyard bargains. Prince, insert menacing stare by Naruto. I meant Naruto. Snips wanted to see the Crescent perform against every pony else so he'd win the bet and prove that he knew what was cool. So what you're saying is that your friend Snips made a bet with someone and he can't deliver because Crescent isn't going to do anything, right? Naruto watched the colt nod in agreement. Now I'm sure that since you want me to compete, so that makes you the other person part of this bet, right? Again the colt nodded a little slower this time. So I guess you win then. Congrats, Snails, you know who the coolest pony in Ponyville is. Naruto couldn't help but smile at the bold declaration, until he noticed the unicorn shake his head. So there are more ponies you made this bet with? Again a nod. You're not going to start talking again, are you? One last nod. Fine, let's go prove I'm the best in Ponyville. Naruto sighed as he turned back towards the crowd, wondering if the colt was going to follow him. Either way, the Alicorn was going to do what he did best. Trixie peeked slowly through the curtains as she waited a little longer for the prince to arrive. He better show. Trixie didn't come all the way here to entertain these ponies. Trixie came to prove that she is the best in Equestria. Maybe then he'll come out and meet Trixie like the coward he is. The mare huffed as she looked again through the crowd for a pair of wings and a horn atop of any of the Pegasus's heads. Her search ended with nothing as the clock turned to 4. Trixie is never late, and Trixie swore she would never disappoint a crowd. The mare tightened the cape around her as the sapphire held her ensemble together. Mares and gentle colts! The great and powerful Trixie is here! The crowd blew up as fireworks began to shoot off from the wagon, every pony loving the vibrant colors and display of shapes, something that brought cheer regardless of the age of whoever watched it. Trixie has traveled all across Equestria, and thus my hooves bring her here. The crowd watched as she walked out on stage. Trixie has beaten the foul Ursa Major and saved the denizens of Hoofington from a debilitating loss. The gasps of the crowds to her white lies made things relieved any stage fright she was holding back. Naruto watched the light show coming from the wagon. It was something that he couldn't take his eyes away from, even as he gently nudged his way towards the front of the crowd. Trixie will now prove she is the best show mare in Equestria by doing anything you ponies will do. I can do better. Yeah, now he could understand why he wasn't here. Probably a bad run-in with the traveling show mare or something of the sorts in the past. Who is the first to challenge Trixie? Be quick and decisive, as Trixie's time is something no pony can afford to spare. Cerulean eyes met Violet, both staring each other down, a smirk adorning the face of the mare as she realized who her eyes had come across. I reckon since no pony is gonna shut you up, I'm obliged to do it for the sake of every pony here in Ponyville. Oh, may Trixie have the name of the earth pony that thinks she is Trixie's better. Ya darn tootin' I'm better than y'all if you keep bragging like that. My name's Applejack, Miss Showmare. If you are so much better than Trixie, then go ahead and prove it by all means. Naruto watched as Applejack dazzled the crowd with her rodeo rope tricks, each little trick she performed getting an ooh and ah out of her audience. Now let's see you top that, little Miss Magic. The mare showed no hesitance as her horn began to glow, letting the ropes spring to life. Its hypnotic dance mesmerizing the earth pony as it coiled around her legs, slowly tying itself with each loop it made. The crowd erupted in laughter as the rope's dance ended with Applejack hog-tied. Does any pony else want to prove they are better than Trixie? Naruto's felt the cold stare directed at him. Each second of eye contact was just another gesture to goad him on stage. TCH, if you wanted the coolest in Ponyville, then you got it. The Cyan Pegasus smiled as the crowd cheered for Flying Daredevil. Oh my, another pony questioning my talent. No matter, Trixie shall prevail as Trixie always does. Naruto could only watch as another of his friends was embarrassed for all of Ponyville to see. The dazzling rainbow the mare pulled off was nothing when the unicorn brought it to life, to further embarrass the competition. Does any pony else want to test themselves, perhaps someone with any magical talent? The crowd stayed silent as he arrived at the front of the crowd, each wondering who would at least topple the showmare. The great and powerful Trixie, right? Well, I have a nice nickname as well. It's called the Prince of Ponyville, and this prince would love it if you didn't embarrass his friends to help promote you show. The crowd erupted into cheers as he flapped his wings once. Well, if you would have walked up here earlier, this wouldn't have had to happen now, would it, Prince? My name is Naruto Uzumaki, and I'd appreciate Trixie if you would call me by that name. Oh no, Trixie wants to defeat a prince, and until then you shall be called that, understand, Prince? Both glared at each other, neither showing the slightest bit of hesitance, only trying to one-up another. Oh, make special. Money talks. Lyra felt the train slowing down as it came to its inevitable stop into Ponyville. Still thinking on how Derpy is going to take the news? The unicorn could only nod as she sighed to herself. Bonbon had been desperately trying to brighten the mood since the train took off and had yet to do so once. Look, Lyra, what you did might seem shallow to Derpy, but in case she says no, I brought enough bits for a week's stay, okay? That was something Lyra didn't expect to hear from her lifelong filly friend. She'd only been able to hold on to enough money for the necessities and rent. Everything else went usually to some sort of sweets. So where'd you get the money, Bonbon? I won it, at the festival. You only had 20 bits the last time I checked, and there is no way you earned even enough money to cover the train's tickets, let alone enough to cover a week in Ponyville. I gambled, okay. I put 30 bits on you winning your competition and came out with tons of bits. So this is my way of thanking for getting me a ticket for the Grand Galloping Gala. The minty-haired could only just shake her head at Bonbon's actions, but she wouldn't complain. It was thanks to herself and Bonbon's curiosity of the royal life of Equestria that got them on this train, so she wouldn't complain. The two got off looking for any sign of the male mare as they hopped off. Oh, make end. Naruto stood before Trixie the showmare, licking his lips in anticipation as they both waited for each other to make the first move. So, Prince, are you going to do something, or shall Trixie steal the spotlight back from you? The Alicorn did nothing but blink as it waited for Trixie to make the first move. He'd seen enough of the showmare's tricks to know going first was practically suicide. He would let her go first and give her a taste of her own medicine like she embarrassed his friends. Fine, if you will not show these ponies a show to remember, then Trixie shall do it herself. Naruto watched as the mare walked forward, her horn glowing as a few fireworks shooting off as the crowd gasped in awe. Trixie felt the crowd's eyes turn towards her as the fireworks dissipated. The knots in her stomach was back in full force as they looked on expecting more. Oh, Trixie, were waiting for something, or was that all hot air you were spouting? She knew the Alicorn was smirking behind her flank. She'd show them all that she was the best in Equestria. Her horns slowly began to glow as every pony watched her in interest, none more than 3 ponies. All eyes on the magenta aura as it slowly covered her frame. Each inch it covered the showmare's coat glistened with magic as it finally reaching the tip of her horn, then dissipated into thin air. Is that a Trixie? 'Cause I'm sure I can do that easily. Oh, by all means, that wasn't the trick, Prince. Naruto watched as her horn glowed again, sparks of magical energy coming off from the horn, a large cloud of smoke enveloping the stage. How do you like this trick, Ponyville's Prince? Naruto ears strained as he could have sworn he heard multiple voices speaking in unison. The billows of smoke clung to the air as Naruto looked on, waiting for something to jump at him, only receiving the showmare's slow trot as a reward instead. So are you impressed or not, Prince? I don't just show this to any pony. In fact, I was saving it for someone special. The voice seemed to echo again. Naruto could only watch the showmare as she took another step forward, a set of hooves appearing out of the smoke. What in the name of Celestia did you do? Trixie could only smile as the smoke finally scattered, revealing 10 more identical versions of herself. Stood the crowd gasping at the sheer sight. Yes, bow down to Trixie as she is the master of one of the most difficult spells of all time. She could only smirk as the crowd murmured with each other, not knowing what else to say as they looked on, hoping for something just as miraculous from their prince. Prince, the crowd is waiting for you to show them something. I mean, it's not like you rushed to the stage to save your friends from further embarrassment by defeating Trixie. Oh wait, you foolishly did. The mare in front of him slowly trotted forward, and with each step she took the remaining 10 would follow in sync with the same smirk written across their faces. Face of Trixie is the most pow. Trixie stopped her tirade of insults as the sound of her magical clones popping behind her rang out clearly. She craned her neck as the unmistakable Alicorn of moons stood embedded in the stage. Crescent, show yourself. Trixie has some things to say to you, and it can only be said to you face to face. She shook in frustration as he stared a hole into the card, wanting to settle things. Naruto looked on at the card, thanking Celestia that Crescent did something to stop the showmare in her tracks, because if he was honest, there was no way that he could have topped what she just did. Naruto regained what little composure he had as the mare slowly turned back to him, her eyes quivering as he realized whatever was going on between the two was a lot more complicated than he originally thought. So are we continuing? Because I don't think either of us want to do this now. He watched as the showmare just walked past him. The boasting and flair she had before left her eyes as remorse and some sort of pain. Naruto now had to know the past between the two. Trixie will humiliate you later. Trixie needs time to think about what just happened. Okay, Prince. The mare didn't even bother acknowledging whatever he had said after her statement, instead relishing on the solitude of what she called home. Well, what would have been solitude if the constant knocking on her wagon's frame wasn't happening? Trixie, it's me, Naruto. I have something to ask you. His voice croaked as he peeked through the few curtains as various brushes slammed into his head. What was that for? I just wanted to ask you something, that's all. The Alicorn flinched as he waited for another product to slam into his face, only for the curtains to push him forward to meet Trixie. Trixie is busy, so please make sure that your questions are something that is worth her time. Yes, I understand, Trixie. Well, ask. I have other important things to do. Can you tell me what happened between you and Crescent? What's it to you, Prince? He's my bodyguard, so I'm a little curious about him, alright? Wait, he follows you around. Trixie will tell you, if you can ensure Trixie can meet him? I don't know. I'm sure he's going to attack if that little card throw was anything to shake a hoof at. Trixie assures you that anything he can do, Trixie can match if not counter herself. Fine, but I'm still staying. I don't want you to get hurt because of something I got in the middle of. Fine, you win for now, Prince. Trixie will indulge you with the truth. It all started many years ago back in Manhattan. Outside of Manhattan 13 years ago. Two ponies stood alone as the group behind them murmuring for their loss. One a filly no more than the age of 9 crying in what appeared to be a colt's body. Why did he have to go? Dad was a great stallion. Why did it have to happen to him? The azure-colored coated filly cried into her brother, as he gently pulled her closer, not shedding anything as they both stood before the grave. I don't know, Trixie, but what I do know is that Grandpa Azure is coming soon. The filly cried deeper into the brother's navy blue coat, wrapping her hooves around his frame as he rubbed his hoof through her mane. Everything's going to be okay, Trixie. Grandpa was nice to both of us, remember? We just need to wait with him until Mom gets better. The filly pulled away, the tears still streaming down her face as she smiled at him for the first in a long while. Crescent, can we see her today? It's not far from here and I'll behave, I promise. I'm sure Grandpa will take us there, Trixie? She smiled as the unicorn colt ruffled her mane, laughing as his silly smile written across the filly's face. Their attention turning to a much larger and older stallion with a gray coat approached them both. Joy was written in his eyes as he saw his grand ponies. Grandpa, can we visit Mom today, please? The old stallion laughed as graciously nodded at the younger unicorns, his eyes turning towards the crowd murmuring to each other about the two unicorns' actions just moments ago, only two of the three Lula Moons knowing what was actually going on. I'm sure we can visit her today. Celine and I need to discuss grown-up things before you two talk to her, though. Is that all right with you two? Both ponies shook, knowing whatever that was to be discussed wasn't meant for their ears. Thanks, Grandpa Azure, you're the best. The two ponies followed their grandfather happily, blissfully unaware of his intentions. Wait, you're telling me you're his sister? A small nod and smile came from the mare. That is correct. Trixie's last name is Lula Moon. Does it shock you that she is one? Yeah, it does. I mean, so do you have anything else to tell me? Like you are a distant relative of Celestia's or something along those lines? Of course not. You don't see me claiming to be Princess Trixie, or something along those lines, so no, Trixie has nothing to offer you in life-changing information. Can I ask you a question then, Trixie? You may, Prince. Why did both of you go with your grandfather? Didn't you have some other family you could have gone with? Back then, Prince, Trixie was sure we didn't know that our grandfather changed, so we followed him. It was both of our last lifeline for a happy family, since our grandpa was the only sane family we had. The mare shuddered as she remembered the hardships they both faced under his hoof. Trixie, I'm sure your grandpa was a bastard, but he's rotting in the Canterlot jail right now, probably getting his hay pitchforked by another stallion. The snickers of Trixie brought music to his ears. Perhaps she wasn't as bad as he originally thought. So can we get back to how he hates you, Trixie? Because so far all I got was why he was with his grandpa 2 weeks ago. The Alicorn could see the frustration grow on her face as she started again. 3 years ago in Manhattan. Crescent, come with me, please. It can be just us on the road, no grandpa, no beatings, no anything, just please come along. The mare pleaded with her older brother, as his crimson eyes shone in the night, his eyes already showing the answer to her question. Why not? You are always there for me any other time. Why is it this time is so different? Her voice echoed through the empty streets as a few lights flickered on to see what was going on. Trixie, I can't go with you. Alright, let's just go home and pretend like this never happened, okay? His voice barely above a whisper as his horn glowed a sunny color, ready to settle the problem with magic if necessary. So this is it. You're going to drag me back to Grandpa's and watch him wail on me again for messing up that stupid spell. You changed, Crescent. You don't care at all for me, do you? The mare knew she struck a chord as he took a back step and the bright yellow hue disappeared from his horn. Please come with me, I need you. The mare raised her front right hoof, motioning Crescent to come with her. Trixie, I can't. People need me more than you do. Maybe I'll meet up and I can travel with you next time, alright? He watched as her horn glowed with a bright magenta tugging at his mane to get him to follow after her. I'm not going, Trixie. People need me here and some need you. His voice never wavered as his horn started to slowly glow. A card cut through the air. The colt's mane shrieked as a strand of hair fell, letting the mare stumble backwards, falling onto the cobblestone streets. Who needs me, huh? Some decrepit old stallion who only cares how we present ourselves in Manhattan. Or perhaps the insane mother that never raised us. At least dear old dad has a reason to not be around, because being buried 6 feet under kind of makes things complicated. Or is it you that needs me? Because if you did care, Crescent, you would be right beside me. But you aren't going to, are you? The tears rolled down the mare's eyes as she hoped the words stung as she realized what she said. Trixie, just go before Grandpa Azure comes. He isn't as forgiving as me. The colt's face showing nothing as the mare tried to gauge him for any sort of emotion. I'm going to leave, and when my name is heard all throughout Equestria, and I assure you it will, you'll know that you were the one wrong this day. And the great and powerful Trixie was right. The mare glared at him, pulling herself off the ground, trotting away. That is how I became a showmare. Pretty cool, right? Cool doesn't begin to describe what I want to say about that last part of the story. Sure, your grandfather deserved whatever you said about him, but I cannot imagine even the anger I would feel if I had anyone tell me that, especially my sister. Naruto just shook his head as he watched the mare frown as she looked on at him. I admit, what I said was in anger and something I will never be able to take back, but Trixie just wants to apologize to Crescent and thank him for the help. You know, I should just let you wallow in misery and let things lie like they are, but you both deserve closure, and I'm not one to decide what you two are going to go from there. So will you help Trixie out? I made a deal, and even if I regret it, Naruto Uzumaki is a pony of his word, so yes, I'll bring him here, but what happens after that? The Alicorn sighed as he felt the curtains wrap around him, dragging him towards the wagon's back entrance. Don't take too long. Trixie would like to talk to her brother before tomorrow if possible. Naruto's eyes rolled as she called out to him. He'd find the damn stallion and he'd let the two settle things peacefully. That was going to happen, even if he had to intervene more. The more I find about this, the less I wish I was involved. The Alicorn slowly trotted away, shaking his head at how foolish he was for involving himself with someone else's problems. An hour later, behind the Ponyville school, a group of young ponies huddled around each other, all still debating who knew what was cool and who stole the show at Trixie's performance. It's not fair. Rarity never got to show her magic off to every pony. Sweetie Belle cried out as the other ponies nodded. How are we going to know who's the coolest if she never got the chance to show off? Again the three ponies nodded at the filly. We should do something to make sure that no matter what, we know who's the coolest mare or stallion in Equestria. Yes, Sweetie Belle's right. We need to find or do something that will make it where no pony can deny that she is the coolest pony in Equestria. So I propose a race. Chrysalis smiled as the other three sweat dropped, all knowing the results of the race she was proposing. No way, every pony knows Rainbow Dash is the fastest flyer in all of Ponyville and maybe in Equestria, so she would win the race hands down. Chrysalis. The portly colt stared down the filly as they both stared each other down, ignoring the approaching filly. How about we find those Ursa thingies then? If Trixie can beat one, then everyone else's could, right? The three looked on at Snails as if he had grown another head. That's if any of us know where one is. Each pony looked at each other, scratching their heads as a pale yellow filly poked her head in the Brain Trust, startling the four as they began to realize it was just Apple Bloom. You want to find those Ursama thingies, right? The four just nodded as they listened to the filly. Then they should be in the Everfree Forest. I mean, every other bad critter lives in there, so why can't they be in there? The four nodded in agreement as a small spark of an idea started turning in their head. So is every pony else thinking what I'm thinking? The orange Pegasus filly smirked as the rest grinned alongside her. We're all going to the Everfree Forest, aren't we? The group just nodded as Scudala led the group all in an unspoken pact to undo the other's hero with the Ursa thingy and show that they knew who was number one. I know you are around here, it's the only place that I haven't checked yet. The cloud home sit above them, casting a long shadow over the small area of Ponyville, a popular spot of any pony that wanted to sleep in the shade. The Alicorn didn't bother looking as the unicorn walked in front of him, his eyes already nose deep in some book, acting like he had nothing to do with what happened earlier to him. Thanks for earlier. I got in over my head and you bailed me out, something you didn't need to do. The unicorn barely gazed over the book as Naruto prepared himself. It was nothing really, that Trixie unicorn just irritated me, so I what comes natural to me, which was finding a way to stop the annoyance. Naruto could only roll his eyes as the countless thoughts rolled through Naruto's mind. If that's all, can you leave me alone for the rest of the day? I want to finish this book and perhaps chat with Dash and apologize to Twilight for what happened earlier today. Naruto knew he was just hiding from the showmare, and he couldn't blame him for avoiding her either. Sadly, he made a promise to her, and that was something he did intend to keep. I know the truth about Trixie. She told me everything about how you both are siblings. The book slammed shut as the unicorn walked over to him, a scowl written across his face. She wants to talk to you, and apologize for what she said all those years ago. You pried in my personal business. I thought you would respect my privacy, you more than anyone. The unicorn pressed the matter as he glared at Naruto. I hoped you better than one of those gossiping mares, but it turned out that my faith was misplaced. Big surprise there, I guess. Got anything else you want to say, like I order you to go meet Trixie or something along those lines? Well, I have news for you. I'm not your damn assistant. I'm just here to protect, nothing else, so but out of my life. I'll talk to my sister before she leave, and not when some nosy ass of a prince decides otherwise. Naruto paused, not knowing what to say, as the unicorn walked off, practically daring him to do something. Oh, make special, pen pals, do you know the muffin pony? Derpy looked on at the train as she gently balanced the tray of banana rum muffins on her head. The group of ponies slowly walking off the train as Lyra in her minty glory talking with some pony the female Pegasus had never seen before. Her eye wandered lazily as the duo chatted idly, probably waiting for her arrival. Derpy slowly inched forward, trying to eavesdrop on the two as her muffins began to slowly fall off her flank. Do you think she'll let us stay, Lyra? I hope so, Bonbon, but we'll see what she decides. Okay, Bonbon. Is that her? Yeah, I think it is. The gray Pegasus looked around as she slowly backed away, already caught eavesdropping on her pen pal. She could only imagine the things the mare would say to her now. Her wings already flapping spastically as her left side rose from the ground. Derpy, calm down, it's me, Lyra, and the earth pony behind me is named Bonbon. The gray Pegasus calmed down as they came closer, their tone full of cheer, the platter of muffins dropping to the ground as she looked on in horror, an amber aura stopping 5 from landing on the ground. Sorry, Derpy, I'm just not as good as telekinesis as most unicorns. It's nothing, Lyra, you saved most of my muffins. The Pegasus only smiled as she watched Lyra fit them back in the tray. Come on, Lyra, I'll show you my home. Oh, make end. End chapter end.
Now watch daily exclusive and censored Lemon stories and mature content, along with NSFW images, featuring Harem girls characters from the fics. Access all this and more on my Patreon. Click the link in the description to explore.